Of all the Nazi conspiracy theories that are out there, one has particular relevance today. It's about Europe and the political clout that Germany has inside Brussels. This conspiracy says that Germany's financial muscle, and maybe even the EU itself, are the products of Nazi planning.
Germany sees its role as being the dominant player in Europe. It has tried this militarily and failed twice. After 1945, the Germans realized that real power is not taken at the end of a gun. Real power comes because you can buy it. And that's what happened post-World War II.
In the last years of the war, senior Nazis like Hitler's private secretary, Martin Bormann, recognized that the war was lost. And in 1943, after the failed German offensive in Russia, he set about planning an exit strategy.
Martin Bormann recognizes that Germany is finished. So he gets the key industrialists and the key bankers together and he says, we have to prepare for a Germany which is going to be defeated. And to do that, we need to look at this over a long period of time, move our money, move our patents, move whatever we can overseas so that we can bring it back to rebuild.
Till recently, there was no proof that a real plan had been put in place. But now that's changed. This is a declassified US military intelligence report. It records details of a secret meeting that took place at the Maison Rouge Hotel in Strasbourg on August the 10th, 1944. It documents a conversation between key German industrialists and SS officers.
And here we have in the Red House meeting the final recognition that Germany was going to collapse, the Allies were going to win. Now, how would the Nazis and Germany and German imperialism reinvent themselves after the war?
It was a dangerous meeting to be at, really, because it was said at the meeting that, look, the game's up. We've lost militarily, but we're going to lay down our plans to continue our economic power after the Second World War, and this is how we're going to do it.
It's a historical fact that in the second half of the 20th century, the German economy thrived.
These same corporations who'd been so helpful to Hitler began to dominate the post-war world as well.
Today, companies like Krupp, Siemens and Volkswagen have grown into some of the largest and most powerful corporations in the world. Their influence and financial muscle, one of the major reasons Germany is so dominant in EU politics.
This new European experiment has as its center Germany. And so it should. It's the biggest, most important economic operation on the continent. And that economic powerhouse is driven by the money they stole and the money they made during World War II.
Many disagree, but some are convinced that Germany's industrial clout today owes much to Nazi planning. One of them is Rodney Atkinson. The renowned academic and political economist has the ear of Nobel Prize winners and presidents. He's no conspiracy theorist, but nevertheless, he maintains that the EU also has its roots in Nazi thinking.
During the 1930s, the Nazi regime drew up their plan for a European economic community, which is almost identical to the structure of the European Union today.
Driving the idea was a man called Walter Funk, a key economic advisor to Hitler.
Funk himself was a leading Nazi who was responsible for a lot of the ideological extremism which Hitler adopted. He'd been responsible for the dispossession of the Jews So he was not only a hardline ideologist, he was actually a practitioner of the Nazi policies.
In 1940, Funk published a paper that outlined his vision of the economic unification of Europe with Nazi Germany at its center.
In this paper, Funk lays out the steps that have to be taken to ensure what he calls a large unit economy will be built after the end of the war.
It could just be a coincidence. But in 1958, just 13 years after the Nazis' defeat in World War II, Funk's vision became a reality when the EEC, the forerunner of the EU, was formed. But Rodney Atkinson isn't convinced of this coincidence. According to him, the EEC wasn't just a Nazi concept, but an organization that was much, much closer to them.
Walter Hallstein was a leading Nazi under Hitler. He was a member of the Nazi Lecturers Association. Not something you can become a member of unless you're ideologically pure. And what did he become? Well, there he is, popping up in 1958 as the first president of the European Commission in Brussels.
So, could today's EU really be some kind of Nazi plan? A fourth Reich? It's an idea that's easy enough to shoot down.
Well, there isn't a Fourth Reich clearly in the sense that there's no country that's a Nazi country, there's no genocide going on, there's no wars in Europe. But what there is a continuum of economic power from the major companies and corporations from the 1930s in Germany to the present day.
There's no denying Germany's dominant role in Europe today. Its influence largely down to its financial muscle. But whether or not this could be the result of Nazi-era planning and the industrial theft of gold during the Second World War is a matter of opinion. Some will believe the conspiracy, and others won't. But perhaps that's because the Nazis are a group that we still think are capable of anything.
In most conspiracy theories, the conspirators are these psychopaths, people who are bent on world domination at any cost, and they'll stop at nothing. They'll kill any number of people and commit any number of atrocities to achieve their ends. And so it's no surprise that we see so many conspiracy theories come out of the Nazi regime.